There are ghost towns in Arizona where nothing grows, not even silence. El Sol Rojo was one of them. The desert had eaten the town years ago. Sand had poured over it like a biblical punishment, swallowing homes, burying roads, and silencing its people. Only the old mission church remained, standing on a cracked plateau of red sandstone, untouched by erosion, untouched by time. And every Sunday at sunrise, it bled. Literally. The walls wept crimson tears, thick, slow, and warm like fresh blood. The scent of iron clung to the wind. Tourists came for the mystery. TikTokers came for the content. Most ran the moment they saw the first drop. Some didn't, and none of those ever returned. Elias Greer was a man of logic, a former police detective turned freelance investigator. He didn't care about the supernatural. His mission was simple: find out what happened to the LeBlanc family, a group of urban explorers who disappeared inside the mission 6 weeks ago. Their last photo had gone viral. 4 smiling faces standing at the rusted church door as the sun crested the horizon. Then nothing. No bodies, no trace, just that blood-streaked door. Elias came alone. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he believed in human evil, and this place stank of it. He parked his Jeep just before dawn. The desert was unnaturally still, the kind of quiet that presses into your ears like pressure underwater. The church loomed like a scab, its cross broken, leaning, bleeding from the stone. Elias stepped closer. The temperature dropped suddenly. The door creaked open before he touched it. From within, a voice whispered a single phrase, Psalm 139:8. If I make my bed in Sheol, behold, you are there. Elias froze. He hadn't told anyone where he was going. Elias stood at the threshold of the bleeding church, one hand on his holstered sidearm, the other on the doorframe, slick with blood. It felt warm, too warm. The whisper had stopped. Silence returned, but it didn't feel empty. It felt crowded. He stepped inside. The air was thick, not just with heat, but with presence. There was no dust, no decay, no birds nesting in the rafters. Everything looked preserved. The pews were lined perfectly. The crimson carpet was vivid and clean. At the altar stood an old wooden pulpit, still upright, and behind it, a giant stained glass Jesus, his eyes blackened by age or smoke. But the walls, they bled like skin split open. The blood dripped down, staining the white stone. It pooled beneath the pews. Elias heard the echo of soft breathing. He spun, gun raised. Nothing. He forced himself forward, past the pews. The red carpet squished slightly under his boots. He shined his flashlight down. Footprints, fresh, bare, child-sized. They led toward the trap door beneath the pulpit. Elias hesitated. He could turn back, call it in, but something inside him, pride or guilt, urged him forward. He knelt, opened the trap door slowly. The hinges screamed. A rank breath of air hit him. Beneath, a narrow staircase disappeared into blackness. Something moved below, a faint shuffling, like wet feet on stone. He descended.
The stairs went on far longer than the building should allow. Eventually, the tunnel leveled out into a corridor lit by weak, flickering lanterns hung from stone hooks. Painted on the walls were scriptures, but they were twisted, rewritten versions of biblical verses. The sheep will not leave the flock, even as the wolf feeds. Those who stray shall be sealed in the house of the Lord until he returns. As Elias moved deeper, the air grew warmer and the smell of old blood thickened. He turned a corner and stopped. The corridor opened into an underground sanctuary. Dozens of mummified corpses sat upright in pews, dressed in white robes, faces frozen in twisted reverence, their mouths agape. On the altar stood a photograph, the LeBlanc family, burned around the edges. Below it, written in blood, "He takes one soul, one family, each year, until the voice is heard." And a voice behind him whispered, "You shouldn't be here yet."
The whisper struck Elias like a bullet to the spine. He spun around, flashlight beam slicing through the corridor. But there was no one. Just the silence again. That suffocating, almost wet quiet. Except now the lanterns were gone. The entire tunnel behind him, black. He turned back toward the underground sanctuary, hoping to reorient himself. Gone. The pews, the corpses, the altar, all vanished. There was only a stone hallway stretching forward again, shifting as though the church refused to be mapped. He was inside something alive. He followed the stone corridor, heart hammering, weapon drawn. It sloped downward now, steeply. More bloody scripture appeared on the walls, freshly written, still dripping. He feeds them his voice, and they are full. Eventually, Elias emerged into a chamber. This time it looked like a chapel, but melted, dreamlike. The altar was twisted iron, the pulpit bone, and behind it stood a man. Ragged cassock, long gray beard, eyes black as a night without stars. "You've come to hear the sermon," the man said calmly, voice smooth, but wrong, as if two people spoke through one throat. "You're just in time." Elias raised the gun. "Who the hell are you?" The man smiled. "The last voice of God in this town. Father Thomas Avery, shepherd of the dust, keeper of the storm." Backstory, revealed through chilling dialogue. 30 years ago, a sandstorm swallowed the ghost town of Marrow Pass. The townsfolk gathered at the church for shelter. The missionary, Father Avery, took it as a divine sign, a test. "The Lord told me the storm was not wind, it was the wrath, and I was to keep my flock inside the fold." He locked the doors, nailed them shut. For days they screamed to be let out, begged, died. But Father Avery kept preaching, every morning, every night, until no voices answered but his own. And when the last one fell still, I finally heard him speak back. He gestured to the walls. "This place became his tongue, the stone, his breath, the blood, his memory." Elias was frozen. Then he asked, almost against his will, "Why does it still bleed?" Father Avery's smile widened. "Because I'm still preaching." Suddenly, the bells began to toll,
from nowhere and everywhere at once. Elias clutched his ears. The sound wasn't just loud, it dug into his bones, whispering in reverse. He backed away, but the floor was melting again, the ground cracking like glass under his boots. The missionary stepped forward, arms outstretched. "You stepped inside at sunrise, Elias. You heard the sermon. Now you can never leave."
The bells fell silent, and then the silence sang. It began as a whisper, but it grew into a choir, not human voices, choked, gargled, dry as bone. Dozens, maybe hundreds, all chanting a sermon in reverse Latin, rising from the cracks in the floor, the walls, and inside Elias's own skull. Confess, convert, consume. Elias stumbled backward, but the stone turned soft, like old meat. His boots sank. He fired his pistol into the wall. Crack, 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 and red mist sprayed out instead of dust. The building moaned. Without warning, Elias fell. The floor gave way like a trapdoor, and he plummeted into darkness, landing hard in what looked like the nave of the original church, but intact, not in ruins. Pews were full. Men, women, children, all dressed in dusty turn-of-the-century clothing, but none moved, none breathed. Their eyes had been gouged out, mouths stitched shut with black thread. At the pulpit stood Father Avery, younger now, voice ringing with divine fervor. "The storm comes, my lambs, but only those who bleed with faith will be spared." And then he pointed directly at Elias. The entire congregation turned their heads toward him. Their stitched mouths began to split open, threads popping one by one, revealing rows of teeth too long to be human. "Sing with us," they hissed. They rose from the pews like puppets on strings. Elias ran between them. Every step echoed through the hall like thunder. The exit loomed, the massive oak doors Father Avery had once sealed shut. But as Elias reached them, he found them covered in flesh, living, breathing, pulsing with veins. He screamed and punched, kicked, shot, but the doors absorbed it all. A voice hissed behind him, "You can't leave, not until you understand why you came." Elias was thrown backward by an unseen force. He crashed into a cracked mirror mounted above the altar, and suddenly, he was home. Not physically, but he was seeing, vividly, a memory, his mother, crying on the porch, a man, his uncle perhaps, dragging a suitcase, shouting. Then a church, not this one, but similar. A missionary laying hands on a child, the child screaming. Another flash, his younger self hiding under a pew. He had been here before. Elias hadn't just stumbled into this haunted ruin, the church had called him back. He was the last child to escape before the storm, before Avery sealed the town. He had suppressed the memory, the trauma. His parents never spoke of it again. But he remembered now. The way Father Avery smiled at him, called him pure, whispered, "One day you'll preach in my place." And that's why the church bleeds. It was waiting for him to come back, to inherit the pulpit. Elias stood before the altar, hands trembling, blood soaking the floor. The ghostly congregation surrounded him, silent now, expectant. Father Avery stepped down from the pulpit, offering Elias the Bible bound in skin. "Preach, son. The storm is coming again." Elias looked at the book, then at the doors behind him, and realized he had one chapter left to choose. The Bible in Father Avery's hand breathed. Its cover, sewn from human skin, pulsed with slow, wet heartbeats. The pages fluttered despite the still air, whispering prayers in dead languages. "Preach, son," Avery repeated, his eyes bottomless. "They're waiting." All around Elias, the congregation of stitched mouths stared, hungry, hopeful, horrible. But Elias didn't move. Not yet. The church wasn't just haunted, it was a trap built from trauma. Elias's memories flooded in. The hymns, the whispered threats disguised as blessings. The nights he spent locked in the basement for doubt. He hadn't escaped by chance. He had been let go, saved for this moment. A living seed of Avery's gospel meant to grow into the next preacher of pain. "The storm always comes back," Avery said gently, walking the aisle. "It must be fed. Preach, and you will be its eye." Elias opened the book. Inside, the words bled, reshaping themselves into sermons he had never written. Sermons about obedience, blood, sacrifice. He felt his tongue swell, ready to recite, but his hand trembled. "No," he whispered, "I didn't come to preach. I came to end this." He hurled the Bible into the altar fire. It shrieked. So did Avery. The walls cracked, the ceiling buckled. From every corner, voices screamed. The angry dead, the forgotten victims, the storm-bound spirits of Dunlow. Avery's skin peeled away, revealing a being made of smoke, ash, and sermon pages. He lunged at Elias. Elias ran to the altar, ripping down the old crucifix, not out of faith, but fury, and drove its rusted base into the floorboards. "You want blood? Take mine, but not another soul." A blinding light erupted. The church exploded inward, folding like wet paper, collapsing into itself in a spiral of wind, ash, and screams. And then, silence. The town of Dunlow, what remained of it, was still. The fog lifted. The air tasted clean for the first time in a century. A small wooden cross stands where the church once did, surrounded by grass. Nothing grows there. Locals say a man came, left flowers, and whispered a prayer for the dead. They don't remember his face, only that he limped and wept. No sermons have echoed through the hills since. But some nights, when the wind is just right, you can hear a whisper. Confess, convert, consume. Only this time, the voice is different. This time, it fights back.